Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, we've covered some pretty intense topics on this show, but there's one area we keep coming back to, an area that seems to just fascinate people.
Yeah, I think I know what you're getting at. Those books throughout history that people were almost afraid to read.
Exactly. We're talking grimoires, ancient texts, books that people believed held dangerous knowledge.
Oh, I love those.
So we thought, why not dedicate an entire segment of the deep dive to these feared books? Welcome to Occult Archives.
Where we'll be unearthing the stories behind these books.
Uncovering the mysteries and legends that have made them so infamous.
From the myths to the realities.
So buckle up for episode 132, Charting the Cosmos.
William Lilly, Prophecy, and the Lost Science of the Stars. Sounds a little different than our usual fare, right?
Yeah, you could say that. We're not diving into a spell book this time, but I think you'll find it equally fascinating.
We're exploring the world of 17th century English astrology. And at the heart of it is William Lilly and his work, Introduction to Astrology.
Oh, originally published under a slightly different title, right?
Right, Christian astrology.
Christian astrology, huh? Now, even back then, astrology was a pretty controversial topic, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Even in the 19th century, when a new edition of Lilly's book was published, there was this whole attitude of just dismissing it out of hand.
Yeah, the editor even mentions this in the preface, talking about how it was fashionable to just bash astrology.
Exactly. But he also throws down a challenge. He's basically saying, hey, before you jump on the hate bandwagon, just give this a try. Spend a few days with Lilly's work, apply it to your own life, then see what you think.
Okay, I like that. A little open-mindedness goes a long way.
Always.
So that's exactly what we're going to do today. Dive into Lilly's introduction to astrology. We've got excerpts from the book, some background on Lilly's life, and we're going to see if we can uncover some of the secrets of this so-called lost science.
It's going to be fascinating.
So first things first, who was this William Lilly guy?
Well, he was this, really clever astrologer. And what's great is we actually have a good amount of information about him thanks to his autobiography.
He wrote an autobiography.
He did. When he was 66, he wrote it all down for his friend Elias Ashmole.
Wait, Ashmole? Like the Ashmolean Museum Ashmole?
The one and only. And get this, Ashmole wasn't just passively reading Lilly's autobiography. He was making notes, verifying the astrological charts in the book. That says something about how seriously he took Lilly's work, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So Lilly is writing his life story for this well-respected figure who's actually going through it with a fine-tooth comb. It definitely adds a layer of, I don't know, legitimacy to the whole thing.
Exactly. But here's what gets me about Lilly. Imagine trying to write a detailed introduction to astrology
Well,
while the plague is ravaging London.
oh, right. He lived through some pretty intense times.
Intense is an understatement. In 1647, while he's working on the book, he gets quarantined for 7 weeks because of the plague. And during that time, he's burying his own maidservants who succumbed to the disease. Talk about a bleak backdrop for writing.
Wow. Yeah, that puts things into perspective. It makes you wonder if he's just trying to pull a fast one, why bother going through all that?
Exactly. The preface even touches on this, saying that facing death like that, his dedication to astrology had to come from a place of genuine belief.
It definitely challenges the idea of him being some sort of, con man or fraudster.
Right. Facing his own mortality, his commitment to astrology takes on a whole new meaning. It speaks to how people saw the world back then. The cosmos wasn't just some abstract concept. It was deeply intertwined with their lives.
Okay, so we've got plague, we've got astrology, we've got a connection to the Ashmolean Museum. What else happened in Lilly's life?
Well, after he gained some financial independence, he moved to Hersham in 1665, right smack in the middle of another plague outbreak. Can you believe it?
This guy and the plague, I swear.
I know, right? But then he does something really interesting. He starts studying physics.
Physic, like medicine.
Exactly. And by 1570, he actually gets a license to practice as a physician.
So he becomes a doctor. Did he, give up astrology then?
Not at all. He kept writing his astrological observations and predictions every month. Even when his eyesight started to fail toward the end, he had someone write them down for him. He wouldn't give it up.
Astrology was truly his life's work. So how did it all end for William Lilly?
He died in 1681 from palsy.
Oh,
And guess who helped with his burial?
Ashmole.
Ashmole. He even put a black marble stone on Lilly's grave that called him a most skilled astrologer. Even in death, that's how he was remembered.
Wow. So this introduction to astrology, what's it all about?
Well, the main focus is on something called horary astrology.
Horary astrology, what's that?
Okay, so imagine you have a burning question, any question at all. You note the exact time it pops into your head, and then, based on the positions of the planets at that moment, you can supposedly figure out the answer.
So it's like asking the universe a question and getting an astrological answer.
That's a great way to put it. And Lilly claimed that anyone, even people with moderate abilities, could learn it pretty quickly.
And they could test it out every day with their own questions and the questions of their friends. That's kind of cool.
Right. The preface even gives this example. Say someone makes you an offer, and you're not sure whether to take it. You note the time, cast a chart, and within 5 minutes, you supposedly know if it'll work out, and even get insights into the person making the offer.
5 minutes, that's pretty efficient. So how does this horary astrology actually work? What are the building blocks of the system?
Well, one of the key concepts is the 12 houses. You've probably heard of these, even in modern astrology.
Yeah, the houses of the zodiac. What do they represent in Lilly's system?
They basically divide up the sky into 12 segments, each representing a different area of life. So, like, the first house is about you, the person asking the question.
Okay, so it's all about you.
Exactly. The second house is your money and possessions. The third is siblings and short journeys. The fourth is your home and family. You get the idea.
So each house is like a piece of the puzzle, a different aspect of your life.
Right. And Lilly believed that the houses had different levels of power. The strongest were the angular houses, the first, fourth, seventh, and 10th.
So some houses are more influential than others.
Exactly. Then there were the succeeding houses, the second, fifth, eighth, and 11th. Those were kind of in the middle. And the weakest were the cadent houses, the third, sixth, ninth, and 12th.
Okay, I see. So the houses set the scene, so to speak. But what about the planets? What role do they play?
The planets are the actors on this cosmic stage. Each planet has certain qualities and significations, like Saturn is associated with old men, fathers, things that are slow and melancholy.
So Saturn is like the grumpy grandpa of the planets.
Kind of. Then you've got Jupiter, who represents judges, clergy, things that are more balanced and fortunate. Mars is all about action, energy, even aggression.
Okay, so each planet has its own personality.
Exactly. The Sun represents kings and authority figures. Venus is about love, beauty, harmony. Mercury is communication, intellect, travel. And the Moon, that's the public, emotions, things that change quickly.
It's like a whole cast of characters up there in the sky.
It really is. And just like actors, the planet's performances can be affected by their placement in the zodiac.
Oh, right. Their essential dignities and abilities.
Exactly. When a planet is in a sign that it rules or is exalted in, it's like it's in its element. It can express its best qualities.
But when it's in a sign that it's in detriment or fall in.
It's like it's trying to play a role it's totally unsuited for. Its negative qualities come out more.
That's a great analogy. And then there were the lunar nodes, right?
Ah, yes. The dragon's head and the dragon's tail.
Hmm.
Lilly thought they were less important in birth charts, but in horary astrology, they can definitely stir things up. The dragon's head is generally considered beneficial, while the dragon's tail can be a bit more troublesome.
Okay, so far we've got the houses seating the scene, the planets as the characters, and their essential dignities determining how well they're playing their roles. What else do we need to know?
Well, we need to consider how these characters are interacting. That's where aspects come in.
Aspect.
Those are the angular relationships between planets. Like, if two planets are 60 degrees apart, that's a sextile, a harmonious aspect. But if they're 90 degrees apart, that's a square, which can indicate tension or challenges.
So it's not just about where the planets are, but how they relate to each other.
Exactly. And then there's something called reception.
Reception? Sounds fancy.
It's basically when two planets are in each other's dignities. Like, say, Mars is in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, and Venus is in Aries, ruled by Mars. They have this mutual understanding, even if they're in a challenging aspect.
So it's like they're speaking each other's language.
Exactly. It can smooth things over, even in difficult situations.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense. Now, I know Lilly wasn't just sitting around theorizing about astrology. He actually used it to make predictions.
Oh, he was famous for his predictions.
Ah.
Especially his predictions about world events, what we call mundane astrology.
Didn't he predict the Great Plague and the Great Fire of London?
Well, in 1651, he published a book called Monarchy or No Monarchy, which had these hieroglyphics that people later interpreted as predictions of those events.
Hieroglyphics. That's pretty cool.
Right. And he definitely had an explanation for the Great Fire.
Oh, lay it on me.
He connected it to the fixed star Algol, also known as Bull's North Horn. This star was in a certain position in 1666, very close to what he believes was London's ascendant in its astrological chart. Basically, he saw it as a celestial sign of fire.
Uh, and then, of course, the fire actually happened.
It did, and Lilly was actually questioned by a committee investigating the fire. They wanted to know if he deliberately set it or knew who did.
I bet that was a tense interrogation.
It was. But Lilly maintained that after looking into it, he concluded it was the finger of God only.
The finger of God. So he's acknowledging a higher power at play, even while using astrology to understand these events.
Exactly. He's not saying astrology is the be-all and end-all, but it's a tool for understanding the influences at work in the world.
Okay, so we've got the theory, we've got the predictions, but let's get into the nitty-gritty. How did Lilly actually apply these astrological principles to answer specific questions?
Well, his book is full of examples. Like one question is, a ship at sea if lost.
A classic maritime mystery. How did he approach that?
He'd cast a chart for the moment the question was asked. Then he'd look for the planets that represented the ship, the querent, and analyze their positions and aspects to see if the ship was likely to return.
So it's like a cosmic detective story.
Exactly. He tackled all sorts of questions. There's one about a woman's honesty, where he looked at the significators for her character based on the planets. Another one's about a runaway servant. He used the chart to try to figure out which direction they went and when they might return.
So these charts could be used for some pretty practical matters.
Absolutely. And he even delved into the political turmoil of his time.
Oh, right. There was that whole thing about Cambridge being taken by the king's forces during the English Civil War.
Yeah, someone asked him about a report they heard, and Lilly cast a chart for the moment the news was received.
And what did the stars have to say?
Based on the chart, he determined the report was false. Cambridge hadn't been taken. And what I find interesting is that he doesn't take sides. He's just analyzing the astrological indicators.
Staying neutral in those times must have been tricky. So he covered lost ships, runaway servants, war rumors. What other areas of life did people consult him about?
Well, health was a big one. There's a query about which part of a person's life would be best, where he looked at the placement of planets to see when they'd experience good fortune and when they'd face challenges. There are also questions about illnesses, where he'd use the chart to try to understand the nature of the sickness and whether the person would recover. He even had this table showing which planets ruled different parts of the body.
So it was like a cosmic medical diagnosis?
You could say that. And of course, there were questions about money.
Who doesn't want to know about money?
Right. There's this query about attaining riches, where Lilly analyzes the chart to advise the person on how they might improve their financial situation. He even suggests marriage as a possibility, based on the astrological indicators.
So it was like financial and relationship advice all rolled into one. Talk about a multifaceted practice.
And he didn't shy away from big picture questions either. There's even an example of him analyzing a chart for the commencement of the Commonwealth in England.
Trying to predict the fate of a whole nation. That's pretty bold.
It is. And based on the chart, he concluded that the Commonwealth wouldn't last and that its enemies would eventually bring it down.
And was he right?
Well, his prediction about the duration of the Commonwealth was surprisingly accurate. Whether that was due to his astrological skills or just a lucky guess, it's hard to say.
Either way, it shows how broadly he applied these principles. Now, given that he was teaching this heavenly knowledge, what kind of advice did he give his students?
He had a whole section in the book called Epistle to the Student in Astrology. And the first thing he emphasizes is humility.
Humility. That's an interesting starting point for someone teaching about, supposedly predicting the future.
Right. He tells his students to be thankful to their creator and not let their knowledge go to their heads. He warns against pride and arrogance.
So it's not just about mastering the technical aspects of astrology, but also cultivating a certain mindset.
Exactly. He even says that the purer your spirit, the better your astrological judgment will be. He believed that moral and spiritual development were essential for anyone practicing astrology.
That's a perspective you don't hear too often these days. It's fascinating to see how intertwined astrology and spirituality were for Lilly.
It really highlights how differently people viewed the world back then. Astrology wasn't just a hobby or a way to make predictions. It was a way of life, a way of understanding your place in the cosmos and connecting with something larger than yourself.
Well, I have to say, this deep dive into William Lilly and his introduction to astrology has been eye-opening. He was a complex figure who lived through some extraordinary times, and his work offers a unique glimpse into a worldview where the stars held profound meaning and influence.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Even if you don't believe in astrology, it's fascinating to explore these historical perspectives and try to understand how people in different eras sought answers to life's big questions.
Absolutely. And maybe, just maybe, there's something we can learn from these ancient systems of knowledge, even if it's just a reminder to approach the unknown with humility and a sense of wonder.
Well said. And for our listeners, if you're intrigued by this glimpse into 17th century astrology, I encourage you to delve deeper into the history of science, the occult, and the social and cultural contexts that shaped figures like William Lilly. There's a whole world of fascinating knowledge out there waiting to be discovered.
And we'll be back next time with another episode of Occult Archives, exploring another one of history's most feared books. Until then, keep those eyes on the stars. And maybe, just maybe, they'll whisper some secrets back to you.